Okay, so this video covers the T-34-85 turret. I'm just going to do the more durable of the detailing and add the turret neck. Now, I'm going to start with the turret neck, and then I'll explain this other stuff here. Just because we want to let this have a little bit of time to dry while we're doing the rest of the stuff. So you're going to need about 4 of these little clips and a skewer. So just set the turret neck pieces on the skewer. Kind of, you might want to flex them a little bit if they're not quite flat. Bring them as close to flat as you can. Sometimes they're a little bit pushed in from when you work that hole into them. So generally you'll be flexing them like this to get them back to flat again, as long as you punch the hole from this side. Then we're just going to throw a bit of glue on one of these, but not too close to that hole in the center. Now you can spin them around to try to get them to match as good as possible. Sometimes there's a little variation to the edges. And once it's dry, actually I'm going to use a few more clips for this. It's nice if there's no gaps at all, visible gaps around the edges. Once it's dry, we'll take some sandpaper, some fine sandpaper, and just smooth it out so it looks like one piece. And we'll take away any inconsistencies where the rounding wasn't correct between them. So we'll leave that for now. I've got a piece about 1 millimeter wide, and I've pre-hardened it with 2-to-1 glue. And I'm going to cut just a little bit, and I'll show you the part on the turret I'm trying to make. It's this little part here. So just cut it approximately the same length. And if you kind of saw back and forth, quite often when you've pre-hardened these pieces, they tend to jump across the table. And if you can saw back and forth rather than pushing down, then they hopefully won't hop across the table on you. So we've got that part made, and we've got a 7mm hole punch disc cut out already. An 11mm button, which I'm just going to sand down a little bit. Doesn't have to be a great deal, but just sand it on both sides a little bit, so it can glue to paper. Oh, and I should explain this as well. Now, traditionally, I've always used 5mm googly eyes for these parts on the back. However, I just recently came across these in the local dollar store, and they're enamel dot stickers. And these, the center line, now these are way cheaper, easier to get, and you get lots of them when you buy them. These, I only got about this many in a package, so these parts are probably useful as well for few vehicles, although not very often. And these ones I don't know of a use for yet. These will do that, make this part, and they're maybe a little bit big, which I didn't notice in the store, but they're going to look a lot more like the actual thing did on the tank. So you can use 5mm googly eyes, or you can use these enamel dot stickers of the smallest size. If you can find them, or if you don't mind paying a little bit extra. So I'm going to use the Google eyes on one, and I'm going to do another turret. I'm doing 2 of each. So I'm going to do one with the 7mm and one with these things, because I've never actually used them before. I just recently found it. So I'm not sure that they take paint well or any of that. So I need to do some experimentation. But they sure do look more like what the historical object looked like. And from the way they take glue, I'm saying experimentally they're probably going to take paint just fine. I didn't even wash these, and you should always wash any plastic part with detergent before applying it. So I just took them out of the package, and it looks like they'll hold paint right away. Good indicator. If they'll take glue, then the paint will stick to that, right? But again, I've always used these 7mm Google eyes, and you get a lot more of them for the price. And they look fine. I mean, and that's what I've usually used, and I've always been happy with them until I saw those, essentially. All right. Now the 11mm button goes here on this symbol. And then 7mm hole punch disc here. Looks like I need to modify the template so that actual circle is 7mm. It's one of the earlier templates I did, so some of those were not accurate. Put that little hinge there. And use your piece. It's smart not to cut these apart because this one section is pretty small. So I've left them as one part until now, but they actually are 2 parts. And you can tell whether it's been cut apart or not. So this goes toward the front, and the other part toward the rear. I would put them both on at once and then adjust them. Because they're a little bit smaller than the size of the button. It's supposed to be like a little ring. And just don't press them right against each other. Leave a little bit of space between them. And hopefully you can see that I've left just a tiny gap. I didn't actually close them quite together. And you can actually make it bigger than that if you wish. Try to make sure they're facing straight forward, which is hard to do now that you can't see the symbol below the button. But as long as you estimate it, you should be fairly safe. Okay, hopefully this is dry enough now. Seems fine. Okay, just locate my sandpaper here. Here we go. there you go. Hold the piece and move the sandpaper. It was silly to try to do the other way. And try to match this up nicely on every side, so it looks basically like one piece. And you'll get that more of that effect again once you put a layer of glue or two on there. But you don't want big ridges or anything like that. Oops. Right in the glue. Okay, and then as a final touch, you might want to take the sandpaper and just kind of, sometimes you create a bit of a ridge around the edge by sanding it. So you got a nice round piece now. Kind of spin it and see that it's, yeah, it's pretty round looking. We're going to install that, obviously, right there. So it's sometimes hard to get this to go right down. So you have something heavy, like this, for example. Once you've got it glued in, so use the skewer to get it into the place you want. Here, I'll show you what I mean. You really want to make sure you get lots of glue around the outside, because that's where the bond is necessary. That's where you'll see it if it doesn't bond correctly. So having a little bit extra glue does not hurt. So once you've got that set in the spot that it wants to be in, you can pull that out, lay it down, put something heavy on it. And you shouldn't disturb that stuff, it should be dry enough. Try to get the weight centered, and that should bring you the more durable on the detailing for the turret. All right.